Welcome to the Royal Court. I'm your host, Chance Burke, and joining us today via Zoom is an award-winning actor and director from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Robert Peters. Welcome to the Royal Court. How are you doing
Thank
today?
you. Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. So basically, I'm just going to ask you some questions to kind of talk about your career, how you got started, what all you've done. So first off, um, big in the movie industry. Where did you get? What was your first start? Like commercial movie? What was your first start?
It was actually my first start was in Arkansas as far as movies. I mean, I worked. I started at the lowest of low, which was a driving extra, which means they don't really even care if they see you or not, as long as they see your car. So I basically it was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and so I got on that movie, and then I worked my way up to being a stand-in for one of the stars of the film, a guy named Alan Ruck, who is best known for recently for Succession. He also was the buddy in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But anyway, so that was kind of my entree to the film industry, and I learned a lot, and I just had a real curious attitude about everything, every aspect of it. And then from there, I heard about another movie, which I drove my car up to in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. In that movie, I had three callbacks, which means I go back in three times for the director for one line. And the one line is, they're calling you from New York. I can tell you today because I've practiced it all day long. And so that movie got me into the Screen Actors Guild. And then after that film, I drove my car to the next film, which was I think that was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which was Biloxi Blues. That was a very big movie with Matthew Broderick. And I got on that film as well. And then I went from there, drove my car to Kansas. And in Lawrence, Kansas, I got another small role in a film. And on that movie, the producer said, "Hey, if you're really going to do this, probably got to move to either LA or New York." So drove that car out to LA. That was
Awesome.
that was
Yeah.
the
And
beginning.
so how long have you been in LA? Do you still live there?
Yeah, I do. 30 years. But I recently bought a house in Tulsa where I grew up, and the reason I did that is partly because things are pretty crazy in LA right now, but also because the film industry, and I can speak to your audience about this. The film industry is moving, and you've got a much heavier production in Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico, and now, thankfully, Oklahoma. So I've done 5 or 6 movies in the last 2 or 3 years, even during the pandemic here in my home state, which I've loved. But yeah, my basic, I still basically live in Studio City, California.
Awesome. I'm sure you love the Oklahoma weather just as much as the California weather. So,
Exactly,
um,
exactly.
but over your career, you've been in a bunch of legendary movies, In the Line of Fire, Ocean's 11, Lincoln. So, out of all the movies you've been in, what do you think is the best overall movie you've been in? Like a movie somebody might have in their top 10.
Well, people love Ocean's 11 because of all the stars and all. There I could mention a few films for different reasons. I think Lincoln was appreciated as a historical drama, and of course Daniel Day-Lewis won the Academy Award for portraying Lincoln. But for me, I would probably say In the Line of Fire, because that movie keeps going. And Chance, it
Yeah,
opened up
it's a great
it
movie.
opened up so many doors for me. Well, first off, it was one of the first big movies that I booked in living in Los Angeles, where people would recognize me on the streets from that film, and they'd come up and quote my dialogue. And by the way, I improvised half that dialogue when I went in to read for a hunter. I play a duck hunter in the film, and it's just one scene, but it's one scene where you see John Malkovich plays an assassin, and Clint Eastwood plays an elderly Secret Service guy, and I think it holds up to today. And I think it's one of Clint Eastwood. I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. I think it's one of his best performances because he really shows a real vulnerability that you don't see in a lot of his westerns and Dirty Harrys. But but everything they did in terms of marketing that film, like the trailer, the all the subsequent marketing, they always used my scene, and so it was great. And just as a side note to tell you, when I was your age, well, actually, when I was a lot younger than you, but when I was a kid, I collected Mad Magazine, and it probably means nothing to you, but Mad Magazine when I was a kid was a big deal. It's still in some ways a big deal. I mean, everybody from Jerry Seinfeld to you name it, they say one of the biggest things for them was seeing themselves drawn in Mad Magazine because they would parody movies. So when I saw myself drawn in Mad Magazine from In the Line of Fire, I thought, boy, I've made it. I've done it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I still remember Malkovich shooting you in the line of fire. Yeah, that was a
Well,
great scene.
thank you, thank you. I'll take a bullet if I have to.
But aside from John Malkovich and Clint Eastwood, like you just said, who are some of the biggest name actors that you've been able to share the screen with?
It's a great question. I mean, I've really had the chance to work with a lot of my heroes and people that I just enjoy. I mean, Ocean's 11 had everybody in it, and I think most people think, wow, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, Andy Garcia, all these great people. For me, I was also excited to work with a guy named Carl Reiner who just passed away. His son is Rob Reiner, who directed some incredible movies from When Harry Met Sally to Spinal Tap to Princess Bride. But Carl Reiner was actually one of the really almost they almost call him the father of television, or one of the early he created the Dick Van Dyke Show, and he was a major influence on the television industry as well as film. He did films later with Steve Martin, and so I was excited to meet him. On Lincoln, I got to go to dinner with Tommy Lee Jones, who scared everybody, but he was actually really cool with me. We talked about football. We talked about Texas football, and my brother here in Tulsa was a polo player, so I was able to bring up that my brother Steven played polo, and Tommy Lee Jones is a big polo player. But who else would I want to mention? Uh, well, I mentioned Clint Eastwood, and I really, I almost have to look at my roster, at my resume to remember. But I do know that starting with the first movie, the first two movies that I booked in Los Angeles, one was written by the guy that created the show Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, and that was my first opportunity to work with Dennis Quaid. And I've done several movies with Dennis Quaid. I just did Reagan with him. And then I also worked with Robert Downey Jr. in the movie Chaplin, which was a really big movie at the time. And Chaplin had everybody, and so that was fun to work with those folks, and that was kind of the beginning of my career.
Yeah, that's Iron Man. I mean, the list goes on, and
Yeah,
that's
he's amazing. Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is amazing, and I just I mean, I really, when I think about it, sometimes I have to pinch myself. And I've worked with not only entertainment heroes, but I do a lot of commercials, and I've worked with a lot of athletes that I really looked up to, from Steph Curry to just I've worked with a lot of people that are not actors per se, but people that are just incredible athletes or whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you first started out, I'm guessing, that was kind of the career you wanted to go with. Did you ever think you'd be like, did you realistically think that you'd be in movies with people like that? Or did you think like at first that you'd always be an extra? Or what was the thought process?
No, no, that's a great question. I think early when I was younger, you kind of have this. I can do anything, up until when I was 18. I really knew then that I wanted to be an actor, but then I went to college and I thought, well, I got to be realistic. I mean, can you really make a living at being an actor? Can you, and that was the thing. When I moved out to LA, someone was giving me a hard time. They said, well, gonna be a big star, big shot, are you? It was a friend of my dad's, and he was giving me a hard time in the kitchen. And my dad turned around and said, I think he just wants to make a living at it. And it was a perfect thing to say because that really was in my heart. I go, if I can make a living doing this, I mean, I remember the first time I got paid to do a film, I was like, you're paying me to do this? I'd pay you to do this. And no, I think you, in your mind, you probably alternate thinking, I can do this, and thinking, am I just dreaming? Is this just crazy? But you've gotta at least try. And that was the one thing I was a big turning point for me because I worked in the corporate world when I first got out of college, and I had a great job. I was 22 years old, had a company car, expense account, and secretary, my own secretary, and I thought, but I would not have been happy in that job. And so I was grateful that I at least told myself I got to try. So, and then it sort of evolved, and then kind of as you're saying, I sometimes really do. I pinch myself thinking I'm sitting with people and we're hanging out, and I'm like going, "This if you'd have told me when I was your age that I'd be hanging out with Dennis Quaid or Kiefer Sutherland or Clint Eastwood or whoever, I'd be thinking that'll never happen."
Um, if someone like, let's say I wanted to get into the movie industry, the show business industry, what advice would you give someone who wanted to get into the industry?
Um, the advice I would give you is to first and foremost get into a class where you can study with a good teacher, also with people that are working actors, because acting is like sports. I'm primarily a tennis player. I like to play with people that are better than me because that makes my game better. So acting is the same way. So when I first moved to LA, my first goal was to find the best comedy class that I could find. I don't seem very funny, but I'm pretty funny. And so I found the best comedy class. Robin Williams had been in this class, John Ritter, all these great people over the years. So I would say first and foremost, find a class. Secondly, wherever you are, start getting into the pipeline of communication. So even if you want to stay in Oklahoma and pursue acting, right now is a great time to do that. I mean, now more than ever, really. And so get on the email list of the Oklahoma Film and Music Commission. Start looking at whatever ways you can to find out what movies or TV shows are coming to Oklahoma. And obviously, if you're living in Georgia or wherever you're living, do the same thing. And then finally, I think you got to build a toolbox the same way a construction worker has a toolbox. And I kind of compare acting sometimes to freelance house builders because you basically go from one job to the next job, but you've always got to have your toolbox. And for an actor, it's having good photos that look like you. As much as we like to, change them around, make us look
Yeah,
better.
Photoshop.
What we look like. We got to work with this. And so, get professional photos done and start. And the beauty of it is, Chance, and I think you know this well, is that you're able now more than ever. You can watch and read the stories of like Steven Spielberg, who was fortunate enough to have a great camera when he was at a young age. So he started becoming a filmmaker at a young age. Now anybody can. I mean, these iPhones, the cameras that are on the market right now, they're professional level. So, and I directed a movie it's a dinosaur now, but it was called DVX 100, and at the time it was a great camera, but it's $3,000 or $4,000, which is a lot better than $50,000 for a big
Yeah,
camera.
big time. Phones have come such a long way. I mean, just the basic iPhone, Samsung, whatever it is. I mean, the picture,
Exactly.
audio, everything. Um, but what do you think? Are you still working in the industry, like actively looking for jobs?
I sure hope so. Yeah, of course. No, I'll do this as long as I can, and I love it. We're unfortunately in a strike right now that I think you know
That's a
about.
big thing. Yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
thing.
so we've got a strike that both the actors are fighting and the writers. And the last time that we had a unified strike was in 1960. when Ronald Reagan was president, not of the United States, but of the Screen Actors Guild. So we've got to get through this. I'm thankful that I've still got a couple commercials that are running nationally. So those allow me a little cushion financially. But, yeah, I'm definitely still looking for work. And this is the other thing, too, that is both to advise to your viewers and also what I'm doing. But start making your own films. And so I started making my own films about 20 years ago. And my first short film that I very self-indulgently wrote, directed, acted, produced, sang, everything you could do, I did. But I was grateful to God for a real that little film took me around the world. I sold it to HBO. It made the short list for the Academy Award. So that kind of propelled me to start making more films. So right now, as I wait for the strike to be over, I'm trying to develop my next film that I co-wrote with a couple of guys in Los Angeles. And we want to shoot it in Oklahoma and also Thailand. And I started to go into Thailand with my first short film and for the film festival there. And then now I'm hoping to make it over there.
Thailand and Oklahoma, those are two very different places for sure.
Yeah, I know you don't think them together, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
gonna. But I will tell you this as a side note. So there's elephants are a big part of my
Mhm.
movie. I came to find out there's an elephant sanctuary in Hugo, Oklahoma. So we may end up shooting part of Oklahoma for Thailand because they've got elephants down there, which is amazing.
Is the film about elephants, or is that just
A big part of the storyline. I play a father who's divorced. This is in the movie. Who's divorced, and I'm going to Thailand to get my daughter back. My ex-wife and her new movie star handsome boyfriend have taken her daughter to Thailand, and our daughter loves elephants, and I really have become just fascinated by elephants. And when I first saw them paint, that you can actually go on YouTube and see them paint, and you think, well, they paint, they don't paint. Chance, they paint. I mean, I watched I bought a painting, and they're like looking there. I'm going, this is unreal. So we incorporated that into the story, and they're very soulful. They actually remember people. They like people. They don't like people, and so we're hoping that will be a good part of the story.
Yeah, I mean that sounds awesome. That's crazy because I'm from Oklahoma, and never in my life have I heard of any elephants in Oklahoma outside of like maybe the zoo or anything like that. So
Yeah,
hearing that, that's crazy.
me neither. And just so you know, the reason they have the sanctuary in Hugo is because these were circus elephants that were either mistreated or were older or had really declined in health. So I was it's just cool that we even have it. And like you, I grew up in Tulsa and I'd never heard of it. So I'm going to try to go down there and see if it's something we can use to shoot.
Awesome. Back to the strike for a quick second. It's been going
Yeah.
on for a while. A lot longer than I think a lot of people expected it to go on. When do you have a maybe a ballpark of when you think it would end or it could end?
No, but the issues are streaming, which we all know is taken over. All of us. We all watch movies on our computers and our phones,
Yeah.
and whether it's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all the platforms, and then you've got AI, and AI is something that will affect everybody. But it is amazing what you can do with AI, but it's also very scary for what they could do for actors and basically just eliminate us to some degree and also writers. So I don't know how long it'll go. I do know that I'm hearing from a friend of mine who's on the strike committee, so he goes to some of the meetings. He said the good news was he believes that some of the studios are starting to turn on each other. That it used to be kind of just us against them. Now he feels like they're kind of going, all right, we need to do something here. And so if we, the actors and the writers, can continue to fight the fight, and if you, the viewers, the people who and that's the good news too, is I think most people and not in the industry support us because they know what we're going through, and they do know that these executives are just greedy. They're just flat greedy.
I think a lot of support is, I've seen a lot of people. I've been to LA recently and there was a ton of people out there. So I think if I had to guess, I would think that it would end pretty soon, but I didn't expect it to go on this long, so I don't know. But that's pretty much it. I think you're a great example of like rising story, like an underdog story. Like you started off at the bottom and you slowly, slowly, slowly built up, and you've made a successful life out of it. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show with me today, and I hope that you are able to find more roles and have more success in the future.
Man, appreciate it. Thanks. This was fun. Thank you.